Hey, good evening, everyone. We are glad you are here. Thank you for coming out and participating in our city government. I want to remind everybody that this is a regular city council meeting and the rules of decorum will be enforced. Please hold conversations. If there's something that you must say, raise your hand, and if it's appropriate, then we'll call you to the podium, state your name and ward, and then you can tell us what your idea is. Also, at this time, please silence your cell phones and put them away. They are not allowed in city council chambers, except under Texas Government Code Section 551.023. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Everybody, please stand for the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, we have a quorum this evening. We're only missing council member Sarah Tandy. She has an excused absence, family vacation. City Secretary, do we have proof of notice of meeting?
Yes, Mayor. The notice was posted on August 12th by 2 p.m.
Thank you. Any public comments?
First up, we have Jim Street, Ward 1.
Okay, so be sure to state your name, your ward, please, for the record.
Yeah, I'm Jim Street, Ward 1, 1407 North 8th Street. This is about the boards and commissions. About 3 or 4 years ago, John Kennedy and I were appointed to the Transportation Committee. Only 2 of us were ever appointed. We didn't meet because we didn't have a quorum. We didn't have the required 5 members. And so we were idle. John has gotten very busy in his surveying business. So I don't know how available he is. But there was a discussion a few months ago about boards and commissions, and the subject came up, what about the Transportation Committee? I was watching by Zoom, so I couldn't really comment conveniently. And then the comment was made that, oh no, that was just something that there was a study going on, and that's why we had the committee. The study is over, so we don't need the committee. The study was into an increased truck traffic through on 67 as after the bridge in Presidio is completed. And we are right on that highway, and we already have an abundance of truck traffic here. We will have a bunch more truck traffic, and we're talking about maybe a truck bypass or something, some way to handle the increase in traffic. We also have other transportation issues. The train has started blocking Fifth Street. This happened about a year or so ago. After 25 years, they honored the agreement to stop short of Fifth Street. And then they decided that no, they need to pull across and change at the depot. So westbound trains block Fifth Street. They can block it for half an hour or so. And occasionally a train crew will go through and sit on the horn. I heard one from all the way from Neville Haynes all the way to the other side of the bridge over the overpass. He never let off the horn. He stayed on the horn the whole time. And that's a problem. There have been talk about speed limits and other things. And so there are transportation issues. So I think a transportation committee would be a good idea for the city. So I thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Jim.
We have Keith Seeger, Ward 1.
Good evening, council, everyone in attendance. Keith Seeger, Ward 1, also your Director of Utilities. Tonight, I just have a quick informational item for you, as I'm not due to speak for you till the next meeting, but as tonight you have budget issues to discuss and look over, I just want to let you know the situation where we're at to perhaps help you with these decisions. I regret to inform you that I've had another senior employee turn in his resignation. I'm down to a skeleton crew now. We'll do the best we can, but we need some new bodies. I wish we could just invent them and get them to come in off the street, but it's just not happening, and we're in trouble. I just wanted you aware of that as you discuss things tonight.
Are you at liberty to tell us who that is?
Mike Macias. He'll be missed.
He will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any others?
Next up, we do have Linda Bone, Ward 1.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Linda Bone. I'm from Ward 1. I just want to address the city council concerning whether or not Alpine's long-standing policy of no alcohol use in city parks should be changed. I know that's not on the docket tonight, but I just want to share my opinions with you at this point in time. I believe that we should ask the following questions about the proposal for the Alpine City Council to sell permits to sell alcohol at certain events in Alpine's city parks. Who stands to profit? The first question is, who stands to profit from the sale of alcohol in Alpine city parks? Will the city get a percentage of the sales? Number two, will Alpine's reputation for being a family-friendly community be compromised by allowing alcohol sales in our parks? Number three, would a larger police presence be needed for functions in our parks if alcohol were sold? Number four, would park employees have more cleanup to do after functions at which alcohol was sold? I'm concerned about the safety of Alpine's children. I taught children at Alpine ISD and in other communities around us. I did speech therapy for over 30 years. I love kids, and I'm concerned about the safety of Alpine's children. The long-standing no alcohol use in city parks policy creates a family-friendly environment that keeps Alpine's children safe and allows people of all ages to use the parks without concern about inappropriate behaviors resulting from alcohol consumption. I'm thinking about past 4th of Julys when Coconut Park is filled with people of all ages and cars are parked around the park with just enough space for a person to pass between them. If a child or an adult passing between two cars were struck and injured or killed by a person whose abilities were impaired by alcohol use, the price paid by that child or adult and the community for allowing alcohol use in city parks will have been too high. No amount of money can replace the life of one of our children or any other member of our community. I respectfully ask the members of the Alpine City Council to take responsibility for keeping Alpine's children and other members of our community safe by continuing the current policy of no alcohol use in Alpine city parks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I did also want to give each of you the cover sheet that went with a petition that we had, the 209 Alpine citizens signed, and we brought it and gave a copy of all of the signatures to your advisory committee for the parks.
Thank you.
Last week when we came to their meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind the public that public comments are regarding agenda items only. And it will be at the council's discretion to accept them if they're not on the agenda.
Okay.
And that particular issue isn't on the agenda.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, we have Mary Ann DeBarbary,
Okay.
Ward 1.
Good evening. My name is Mary Ann DeBarbie. I live in Ward 1, and I'm here to talk about permits. There's two in particular that I have run into an issue with. I have a rare lung disease, so I have bought a Generac generator for my house to have a whole house generator in case the grid goes down. And I have already purchased the generator. I've purchased the propane tank. I've had the lines put in. I've done the concrete. I've done everything myself. I paid the taxes on that. When I contacted the representative here in Alpine to come do the electrical, I was told that the permit is $200 to $300 here in Alpine and in Marfa. In Fort Stockton, Odessa, the permits are $75. The reasoning explained to me was that they're looking at the cost of the entire project, and that's what's being charged for the permit. Well, that comes across to me as double taxation, because I've got proof I already paid taxes on that generator and it was not cheap, or the propane tank or anything else. So I'm asking, and the generator is not bolted down, so it's not a permanent fixture. I can get a couple strong men in a trailer to lift it and move it wherever I want it to go. So I'm just asking, to only be charged for the electrical permit, not everything that I've put there. That's my first concern. My second concern is replacing a fence. My neighbor brought this up to me that he wanted to replace the fence around 3/4 of his property. I have the same type. In fact, mine's a little bigger. There's a permit fee of $1 a linear foot to replace a fence. So in his case, it was $1,000 extra to replace the fence. So he didn't replace it. Why would people want to keep their property looking nice if it's going to cost them that much more money? And so that's why it's like you're being punished to take care of your place. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention to see if possibly something could be done. I have been by and talked with Andrew and Jessica, I believe it is, and mentioned it, and they told me they were rewriting some of the permits and things like that. But I just wanted y'all to be aware of it, because it is some stuff that, has quite an effect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lastly, we have Mr. Rick Stevens, Ward 5.
Okay.
Good evening, Rick Stevens, Ward 5. I have 4 items I'd like to comment about. Looking forward to hearing the update on from the city manager's report on revenue and expenses. As I look at the numbers, and I'm sure you all have, and you look at it, it says we're going to underrun revenue by $1.1 million on a budget where we are to have challenges. The good news is it says we're going to underrun expenses by even more. So it'll be interesting to see what the strategy is for that. And the reason that's important is it's germane to the budget looking forward for next year. Second item, staffing issues are clearly a key issue. As an employer myself, I have 2 businesses, making sure we have staff available. It'd certainly be nice to see the city council on a regular basis see the status of staffing here in Alpine. What is the staffing levels? Why are people leaving? Because I think it's an issue that city needs to address one way or the other if we're going to maintain the staff necessary to go forward. The third item is I would echo Jim Street's comment about the Transportation Committee. None of you were on council when we put the Transportation Committee in place. It all had to do with trying to get TxDOT dollars in the measure of millions of dollars when they're looking at the 6790 corridor from Presidio all the way up to Fort Stockton, with the expectation that traffic would double from 8,000 to 16,000 trucks per year. Why is that important? When you talk to Chris Weber over at TxDOT, we already have intersections that are rated A through F in the city of Alpine, and we're going to end up with huge transportation clogs if we don't get in line. And you're talking about getting in line 10 to 15 years from now. The Transportation Committee is all about doing the homework to be able to come back to City Council to go get what I call other people's money to get our intersections upgraded so we can continue to have the traffic flow that we need. If we don't work it now, it will be too late 10 to 15 years from now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes public comments this evening.
Okay, thank you, City Secretary. Okay, so no presentations, recognitions, or proclamations. City Mayor report. I just wanted to update from the meet with the mayors, what the citizens have been discussing and asking about. There's still a concern about speeding. When we met at the Granada, the group was really concerned about it because they could hear it right outside the theater, and we could see it, the speeding. Also, a citizen said Avenue I and J, I think that's Cemetery Road, Avenue I over there. Somebody's pet was run over because people consider it like a rural road is what the citizen was saying, and they just speed tremendously. And then also the one ways and State Highway 118 coming into town from the south. And then also at the meet with the mayor, Mary Ann DeBarbary mentioned the replacing the fence and hooking up a generator and our permit fees, and possibly the need to look at these and see what we should be charging, because we do want people to take care of their property and to replace rundown fences. And then also a citizen sent me an article thinking that we could have another partnership with AISD in New York. There was a contest for elementary school, middle school to design a I voted sticker, just to encourage the people in the city to vote, kind of like the coloring book. And so that was a neat idea that maybe we can discuss more. And then also a citizen came out and he would like for the city and city council to participate in the Catholic Church Bazaar Parade. There's going to be a parade and he would love to have a presence there from us if you would like to attend. And then also somebody gave me some accolades. They said the city pool lifeguards were doing a tremendous job. They were very pleased. A lot of times all we hear is negative. So that was something that was positive. Noise ordinance at the Granada, one of our citizens mentioned that there was a band of motorcycles in and they were just extremely loud. And I don't know what the status is of us ticketing them for noise ordinance or not, and what the issue is for that, but it's something for us to discuss in the future. And then also staffing issues. The public is worried about staffing also. And then roads are always a concern. Every meeting, you can guarantee, you could put money on it, somebody's going to mention the roads. And it is true. And then also the drainage. And especially today, I received several emails from citizens saying that their road was flooded and it's not draining, and there's definitely a problem. So they're asking that we at least put that on our radar, something we might want to address in the future. And then of course the budget. So the residents are in tune with what's going on with the budget. And also some of the citizens at the Granada were mentioning, what about if they donated money to the city? Could we do that? What's the legal aspect? If they wanted to donate $300 and have 100 residents do that, or services, something that they could do for us. So that's another thing that the citizens are thinking about that we can look into. And there will be another meet with the mayor on the 19th of September at the Granada, and that's an excellent venue. If you guys could all come out to that. And then also at the Granada, they are going to have a library silent auction on November the 18th through 20th, which I believe is also the time during Art Walk. I'm at the farmer's market on Saturdays. This Saturday, the farmer's market's closed because of the Fiesta 1888 that's going on, but then I'll be back there again. And the citizens are noticing our cleanups, and I think they're starting to gather more momentum. I believe we had more volunteers for this past Saturday than we have had, and they're hoping that we will continue with our community cleanups. And so then that improves involvement with residents, which is what we're striving for. And once again, we are thankful that you guys are here participating. Okay, and that's it for my report.
Question for Megan on that. Do we have a plan for the noise ordinance? I know for quite some time it's kind of been put on the back burner. Do we?
Actually, part of my presentation.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Good deal. You read our minds. All right, there's no city attorney report this evening. City manager, you're up.
I wanted to give a little update on the SWAC, which is the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. It is an organization or committee that's been through our Rio Grande Council of Governments. The past year, I had allowed Adelina to be my proxy as we were trying to get through budget at that time. This year, I was able to attend the meetings. It's a wealth of information. It's something that the city has benefited from, and then there's a long-term impact as well. So the SWAC is made up of a lot of members. It's not a very small committee. It's members from the Rio Grande County region, so it's 6 different counties. Local government entities who operate a landfill, the City of El Paso Solid Waste Management Department, Donna Ana County actually has a presence. Small incorporated cities within the El Paso County. This is Anthony, Clint, Benton, cities in rural and urban areas, and then private waste management companies. So they also have, they're non-voting, but they have input into the committee. So the committee analyzes problems, establishes priorities and goals, monitors the effectiveness of activities for the management of solid waste in our 6-county region. So the current goals are 1, to promote planning to facilitate adequate services and facilities for the proper management and disposal of municipal solid waste. So this one is really important as a whole, because this one is part of the planning process when we get close to closing an actual landfill. We do have the Big Bend National Park, who is reaching the end of the lifespan of their landfill. They'll have to close it. They don't foresee opening another one within the park. So this committee is assisting in helping with, okay, what's the next step? How do we help solve their problem as a region? Goal 2 provides technical support and services to promote local and regional municipal solid waste planning. This is kind of the brainstorm of it. We get together and say, how do we handle trash? How can we help each other? What projects, what things can we initiate? What incentives in order to handle disposal of solid waste? And then of course, the biggest one is to reduce the amount of municipal solid waste disposed of through waste reduction, recycling, and reuse. This is the side that the city of Alpine has focused on with the annual SWAC grant program. So we are allowed to apply annually for a SWAC grant based off of one of the goals. The city of Alpine has applied for it for multiple years. This isn't anything new. Funds have been used to assist with our advertising, with equipment and disposal fees. This year, we did the community cleanup 2 weekends in a row. They covered the expense of disposing of that extra material into the landfill. We've done tire disposal programs. It's expensive to dispose of tires. We have the mechanisms in place to gather. It's coming up with the funding to actually get them sent to where they need to go. We take advantage of multiple programs with this. We were very blessed with the county cleanup that we helped them clean up the huge pile of tires. They paid to dispose of it. Our glass crusher has been another big project. We actually have had 2 in the lifespan of the recycle center. So we've utilized the grant twice to obtain it. Once was to purchase the first one, and after so many years, it was on its last leg. So we used this grant to go back out again and replace the broken one. So we have the newer glass crusher. The glass crusher is utilized by not just Alpine residents, but the Tri-County area. People love to use it for their yards, for art. It's become very popular. Apparently the blue bottles are the rarest. So if you drink anything in a blue bottle, bring it to our recycle center. This year, we're actually going out for another tire disposal program. This is a very competitive grant. We are limited. They're looking at, for the 6 region area, 71,000 available funds. Not a lot of money. So we try to utilize it to our best ability. We already have the containers to recycle the tires. So we're looking at having them cover the expense of actually disposing of them. And then of course the advertising, getting it out there to the public, getting the flyers, utilizing our radio, our newspaper. These are grants that are handled completely by the Rio Grande Council of Governments. So we don't actually spend the money anymore. They're not reimbursement grants. They actually, we do the legwork, we get all the information to them, and then they actually are the ones who will make sure the bills get paid. They're the ones who handle the grant. So it's a little bit less pressure on the city, less documentation we have to keep up with. It was great to be a part of this year. There is a lot of turnover in the committee itself, as a lot of these positions are held by elected officials. But just to hear and see how they all kind of want to work together. El Paso is a powerhouse when it comes to recycling, but they're in the same boat. It has its periods of time where it's doing great and everyone's on board to recycle, reduce waste, and then it just kind of falls off and nobody wants to do it. So we have a lot to learn on how to continue the education and enthusiasm Landfills are a problem in Texas. The EPA registers 27 active landfills. So they're harder to manage. They are regulated by TCEQ in Texas. You run out of space. So trying to find ways in utilizing this committee is how do we take or not put as much into. I do have a follow-up meeting with the Big Bend National Park. They are looking at a regional project or program to assist them. Brewster County has kind of the same issue. The county itself doesn't have a landfill. They have the City of Alpine landfill. So it's coming up with a regional plan. Currently, they're taking a lot of their material to Orla. That's an expense. So we're going to try to work out something. I'll keep the council updated. They're looking into utilizing Van Horn, who just reopened their landfill. Currently, the City of Alpine landfill has an estimated life of 38 years. So 38 years may not be in our lifetime to have to close and reopen, but it is something to take into consideration, the cost of closing it, finding the land to open a new one, and how are we going to manage that. So 38 years down the road, we get it on your radars now. City ordinances. So there's been a lot of talk about ordinances, and I wanted to kind of touch base on all the different ones we've been focused on, ones you see currently, ones that are coming up. Gio and I have both, probably more Gio than me, have been going through the ordinances, and there's a little thing here and there that just either state law has trumped it now, or you know what, city manager isn't your records clerk, it really is your city secretary. We need to update this. So currently before council, you have the records management. The last time it was reviewed or updated was 22 years ago. It's out of date. It doesn't really go with what we're doing. Escort fees. Mr. Johnson had pointed out, some of the fees that we charge. Well, this one went into effect in April of 2019 in the city, and effective September, the state said you can't do it. You can't mandate cities from requiring escorts for single wheeled manufactured homes that are permitted by, it's a very long out. The information is provided in your packet. We're going to go in and repeal it because the state has now said, well, couldn't do it in 2019. Our utility ordinance. Randy Guzman and Keith Seeger have both been working on this, as well as Gio and myself. It was reviewed in 2021 and brought before council, and the majority of what was taken out was the fees, and they were put into an appendix that gets approved by resolution annually. We're actually going in and making the adjustments on the actual ordinance to make sure it's in compliance with state laws that may have changed. Sections that we may want to add. For me specifically, it's adding in that language that what if a customer has a high bill? Because right now there is no procedure. If the meter tests correctly, the water went through it, they're responsible for the bill. But putting in some of these caveats to help not only our residents, but to give direction to whoever's in charge of it. So it's not this person comes in and we adjust it, this person comes in and we don't. It's having a step-by-step procedure and having the residents be able to understand that, providing that education to them that if I have an issue, it's not, well, they may or may not do it. It's okay, these are the procedures that I know we have to go through to get it fixed. So it's adding a whole new section for customer service. And of course, the fees are still set by resolution, which will come before council. The big one that was just discussed earlier was building services. When Andrew Devaney, first day on the job, I think I gave him 3 days, his priorities was to review the ordinances for building services. A lot of our ordinances will reference specific international code councils that are no longer in compliance. We're in 2020 now, and some of our references 2015, 2018. It's making sure that those are all up to date. He's already jumped on board and he's already started working on that. It's also removing the fees and putting them into an appendix so that council can review those regularly. Every year, what do we want to charge our residents? There may be something that, you know what, we're really not charging enough, and there's something, you know what, we really need to charge less. But it's having the ability by resolution to address those fees regularly and not through an ordinance. The boards and commissions has been a big one. Geo has worked really hard on this. This has been council discussion. We are actually trying to streamline it, separate all of the boards and commissions from all the different chapters and put them into one chapter instead of it being strewn across all of them. This one is in progress as well. The noise ordinance. This did not get set on the back burner. It is moving forward. I got our first draft this morning. This isn't just like we stole it from another city. Chris Brugia and Daryl Lasoya and several members of the Music Advisory Committee have all had a little bit of input in it, including a couple business owners. Addressing commercial versus residential noise levels, music venues. Does there need to be a permit and permit process, definitions, enforcement? It's a 9-page ordinance. It addresses a little bit of everything. It does create some procedures that if you want to have live music compared to a DJ, what's acceptable and what's not. Live music is slightly different because we are a music-friendly community. We want to encourage that music friendliness. It puts time frames on things. You know, you can have music between this hour and this hour. They do have decibel references that indicate between these hours, it can be at 85, it has to be at 75, it has to be at 65. It explains the tools that they'll use to address those. But the one key thing is it also addresses that if someone comes and tells you your music is too loud, that's the first step. That's okay, you've been verbally notified. So they can't come back and say, well, no one told me. So they're putting in mechanisms so that it's not, we're coming after you with the whips and chains. It's, hey, we want to notify you, we want to work with you, and then go from there. And then if you don't come into compliance, there is enforcement. And how do we enforce this? So I've been kind of all day to day picking it up and then reviewing a few things. I love the fact that they put definitions in. Sometimes it's hard to understand what is what, so that helps. So these are all currently in place that we're actively working. Gio and I kind of on a regular basis when we're looking up things, leading to questions. There is a chapter 66 that deals with sanitation that will have to be cleaned up to reflect the changes from our utilities. So as we address sanitation in one section, we need to make sure we address it in another section. There's a lot in the general administration ordinances where it's indicating one position is responsible for something where they're not. City secretary, City secretary hasn't done TMRS, which is our retirement system, since I've been employed with the city. So our ordinance says one thing, let's clean it up to say what it really is. The other thing that's really hard, and I really want the public to understand, is current, prior councils, this is what we enforce. This is as an employee of the city, when we hire employees and when you hire city managers and directors, this is what we enforce because this is what our current law is. It's hard because prior years, maybe we didn't enforce something and then we're trying to enforce it. We see that a lot with cleaning up of the alleyways and high weeds, and we understand that the ups and downs of when and how we choose to do things has created our biggest issue. But I want the public to understand that, this is what we're required to enforce. So we want to make sure it's up to date. We want to make sure it's beneficial. We want to present it to council so that you guys have the ability to be like, you know what? This is from 1978. Let's update it. This violates state law. I know one that we had on the agenda a while back was the signs for political advertising. You charge a permit, do they have to take them down? What does the state say? Getting that back on our radar, we're putting it back together, verifying everything, update it. So throughout the year, and even this past year, you've seen a lot of ordinances come before you because we actively want to update them. We want to improve them, and then we want to make sure our public's educated on them. The best decision we made, recommendation from Gio, was to utilize Unicode more, to get not only the updated ordinances on there, but the ones that don't pass, the ones that aren't quite codifiable, where they just don't have enough changes to charge us the extra fees, that they're on there, easily searchable. You put in noise, anyone who's done it here for the noise ordinance will know the first thing that comes up is under traffic. It doesn't address music. You put in music, the first thing that comes up is our music friendly committee. So it's a great research, great tool. We just want to make sure moving forward, as we get these towards you, we get the input, we have the discussions, and we get them where they need to be. So there's quite a bit to do on this. We try to start with the easy ones. But there's a lot, and they're gonna keep coming. If there are delays, we do apologize. As Mr. Seeger did point out, I mean, staffing changes, shortness, and then relying on committees. Well, we want people's input. So I know Parks Board has been working on making updates with theirs. Gotta give it the time. We don't want to just throw something before you and, have you approve it. And then 6 months later, come back and say, oh, you know what, we kind of made a mistake. We don't really like how this is working. We want it to be a full, ready to go, solid document. Did that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And if there are any ordinances, please let us know so that we can start looking into it and researching. And a lot of it, we do rely on state law, make sure we're still in compliance. And then the fees, just really moving them all out. Andrew is here. He's done a wonderful job. He's pulled his out into a spreadsheet. We've got one started for all of the others to put those into a master fee schedule so that those are reviewed annually to determine, the way, do we need to increase? Do we need to decrease? As an ordinance, you have to go back and do the first reading, the second reading to get those amended. Resolution will make it easier so that you can have the annual discussion to determine how we want to move forward.
I have a question on the fees that we're asking for. Do those go back to that department itself, or does it go back into general fund?
It depends. So the general fund is the police department, animal control, streets, finance, admin, municipal court, parks, building services. Now, fees related to water, wastewater, and sanitation go to that fund, which is the enterprise fund for water, wastewater, and sanitation. Anything that deals with gas utilities goes to the gas utility fund. So the past couple of years, we've tried not to pull money around between them so that they can build and depend on themselves. Water is the only one we really can't touch with money. We can't utilize it for other things because they have the most debt tied to them. So depending on the department determines where the funds go.
Has building services been compared to other comparable towns in the area anytime recently? Or where do we fall comparably to towns the size of Alpine?
I believe it was last year, and Mr. Johnson had questioned it as well. I believe it was last year or the year before, council actually approved the fees for building services when they tried to make some updates. I don't know if they were compared at that time. In 2018-19 time period, one of the administrative assistants was working on what did each of the different cities in our area. Marfa, Monahans, Midland, Odessa, Fort Stockton, Kermit, Wink were also called, and they were brought up in comparison. So we, at that time, and then the master fee list never actually amounted to anything. The fees have changed for those cities as well. So I know that Andrew has been reaching out and trying to ensure, let's look at it as a whole. Some fees we may charge, some permits we may have that other cities don't have. That really is based on their ordinances and what their council wants. So it doesn't mean that, maybe if you're replacing the fence, your fee is different than if you're putting in a whole new fee. But that's where if we separate the fees, we can have that discussion annually to go through and make those decisions.
But we are charging them a fee to put up any kind of fencing or any kind of improvements. But then we're turning around and taxing them on that improvement too, right?
I can't say about the taxing part. I don't handle that side of it, but we do charge a permit for them to build.
It is taxed as an improvement to your property from the price of district.
That's what it just kind of seems, I think we need to really look into them if they're that high, because.
That's why it was his priority third day on the job. We really-
Well, Andrew,
we
thank
really
you.
knew
Yeah.
That there was a problem, and he just came back from a training. So he had the perfect opportunity to network with other cities, to get an idea of how they do things as well. I know before he left, he was excited to get to meet other building officials and see how they do things. We recognize it, Chris. We really do want to make these changes and improvements. I just don't want to give you something with like, no, this is what we're looking at, and then in the reality of it's like, ooh, that was not good. We wanna make sure.
One general rule of thumb on permit fees is to try to recoup the cost of the inspection, but not to really make money for the city. So that's sort of a metric that some cities use.
So there's an inspection on improving or putting up a fence or that type of thing?
If you get a permit, they're gonna inspect, make sure you did work correctly according to city standards for whatever you have the permit for.
So it has to be inspected because we do have city ordinances that regulate the height. And then you're gonna wanna make sure that it's stable when you put it in. And that's what it is. Because if there was no height regulations, I think everyone would probably have 10-foot fences around their house. But these are all things we want to address. Maybe we change that. This is where council has that opportunity. We're just getting you started with the suggestions. We'll email it to you beforehand, and we want you to redline it. Come back with suggestions and changes. The fees is the same thing. We're making a recommendation, but if council's like, you know what, I really don't want to do this, or you know what, why don't we just make it half that rate? Or maybe you have, like I said, replacement versus brand new. Adding these all in together. And it's going to be the same across all of our departments. We're focusing on the big one first, building services. That's been the most vocal lately. Animal control has fees. The police department has fees. We want to address those. As we look at the park stuff, do we want to put in fees for certain things? We charge $25 for the use of a pavilion. It is the only pavilion. Is that enough? They have access to electricity. They reserve the space for that time period. All of this is going to start to come. Just be prepared for big packets.
Karen had a question.
Oh, did you have a question, Karen? Come to the podium.
My name is Karen Cantrell, Ward 3, and you were talking about redoing the building services, things, resolutions and things like that. Are you considering line of sight issues? Because that's a danger all over town. There's a B Avenue, West Avenue B and 12th or 13th, I think it's 11th or 12th. There's a canvas fence over here, big tree over here. You have to pull out into the intersection to see if any cars are coming. And that's not the only one. The new structure over there on Lockhart across from True Value, you stop at that stop sign, you look left, what do you see? You see fence. You have to pull out onto Fifth Street to see if any cars are coming. It's becoming a big issue in this town. I just want to say my 2 cents worth. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Karen.
So our new finance director is present tonight, Ms. Alicia Salinas. I'm gonna finish this fiscal year and she gets to jump into next fiscal year with the finance reports. A little bit of consistency here. Currently at the end of July, the general fund is at 4.9 million in revenue and expenses at 4.1 million. Wastewater and water and sanitation are at 4.2. And their expenses are at 3.9 million. Airport is at 771,000, sorry, almost gave some money there. And their expenses are at 826,000. I do want to point out that the big chunk of their expenses is the $95,000 for the construction project for the lighting. We do have a few more expenses that will come out. The taxiway that was put in at the airport, and part of that will be reimbursed by the rent grant. Hotel occupancy fund 616,000 in revenue, 621,000 in expenses. We did set aside 280,000 roughly from their fund balance to cover the visitor center improvements. So as of this date, we actually have not utilized that money that we had put aside from the fund balance to cover it. Chris is working very diligently to spend money on advertising to make sure we meet the 51%. He sent in a couple more invoices today. We did have the Viva Big Ben, we have the Fiesta 1882. So those are all events coming towards the end of the fiscal year that have not been processed fully yet. So we'll have those expenses as well. I do expect to utilize a little bit of that fund balance because we are supposed to currently spend 308,000 on advertising. So Chris is working hard to get that taken care of, but we are currently under on that. So gas utility has brought in 1.6 million and has expended 1.5 million. Interest in sinking is at 156,000 and actual expenses is 137. We have our last debt payment this month. We'll process it actually this week. And that will go out. It's just the interest on two of the bonds, so it's not as much as our initial payments. We are predicted to spend under revenue collections. Revenue, as you can see, is between 70 for some departments. It's over that. They should be at 83%, but the expenses are falling under as well. All of the departments are very well aware of their financial statuses. We are coming to the end of the year. So as we do come to the end of the year, big projects are of course on hold until the next fiscal year, only because we have to procure them and that does take time. Spending typically stops the middle of September so that the finance department can finish out the fiscal year, making sure everything that's encumbered is actually properly recorded and that we get the invoices to get them paid. So those are two big things. Anything that we have and that builds into our fund balance will be considered part of next year's strategic plan and how the city wants to move forward. So this is how we have our fund balance. Our fund balance is created because our expenditures come under our revenue. And so that money is put aside. And then I say put aside, it sits in a checking account. And that is what we utilize in budgeting if we need to, but that's how we do handle emergencies. And that's how we're gonna move forward with a strategic plan.
Does the summary of expenditures, does it also include things that we've incurred but not paid?
Yes.
And what do you foresee is going to be? Do we have any big items that are going to be hitting us before the end of
The
this
big
budget?
items coming will be Jarrett, the finalization of this last contract. And that will come out of the streets department. The airport will have that part come out. Me begging Chris to spend money in the hotel fund because we do want to spend 51%. Unless we have emergencies, I don't predict gas or water to have huge amounts come out. We do have some big encumbrances right now in regards to, and this is later on in our discussion with the wells, repairs for some of the wells that are pending.
So even with all that, you think we'll still come in under?
Other questions? My report.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, police department report. Daryl, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. You get the rough with today. It's been a long day.
He's been playing in the rain.
Yeah, it was just a little bit. But
No drownings?
no, sir, not at all. We handled the flooding this morning. I'll take on 3.5 inches of water any day, especially in our drought. So we'll get through it. Nothing in particular really that, as far as the water goes, we closed down the creeks. We had flooding underneath the underpass here by the Dollar General. We had flooding at the other underpass by the Coke plant. Fortunately, TxDOT got out there quick and assisted with us and opened up the drains. And as soon as the water started receding, and that helped out a lot. We had assistance from the sheriff's office and from DPS as far as helping us respond to calls while we were busy trying to close up the creeks. And nobody was injured. Everybody's good. And so we work on another day. So let me get, I did something a little different just to start off with that. I also showed, I sent you all our sex offender registration. Judy's aware how this program works. I've always enjoyed working as far as the sex offender registration. The reason I tell you I enjoy it is because I get to actually monitor them. One of the first discussions I have with them is that I tell them I'm their new best friend. Anything that changes in their life, I need to be aware of it. And so it gives us a good, and a lot of them do take it to heart, and they do let me know what's going on with them. And some find offensive, but that's part of it. They have to let me know. I always tell them the golden number is 7. 7 days before, 7 days after he changes, they have to let me know. And so I got called today by another sex offender that he just got out of prison, and so he's going to be registering. I'm up to 15 sex offenders for that register with the Alpine Police Department. We have also some that live on the outskirts that work in town or have business that they take care of in town that register with the sheriff's office. And so, but I included that in y'all's packet so that y'all are aware of it, just to see what's going on. It's something that I show to the school districts every year. They have to be aware of what sex offenders are in the area. That's one of the things that our officers are looking out for. Is when they're in the school zones, is to make sure that no sex offenders are hanging out. We do have a city ordinance that Mr. Potton, when he was with us before, he helped coordinate, and so it does help. Unfortunately, some, if they were living at a residence prior to their conviction, there's nothing I can do about it. They're allowed to live there. But did do a sex offender verification a couple of weeks ago with DPS, U.S. Marshals, Sheriff's Office as well, and we arrested one of the guys that registers with me, and then we also arrested 2 from the Sheriff's Office. So,
Daryl, for those in the audience that don't have access to our packet and those, can you give them information on where on the Texas DPS
Yes,
site
yes,
they can
ma'am.
get in to check their neighborhood?
So I usually, and I'm glad you brought that up, thank you very much. I use an app on my phone just to make sure I verify that all the sex offenders are on there, so that the community is aware of what they're looking at. And so it's a wonderful little app. It's run by Texas DPS. And if you look it up, it says Texas DPS on it. And you can also look for wanted persons, sex offenders. There's other things, but the main one that I use it for is for sex offenders. Texas DPS. And it's black with a white star on it. It has a Texas around it, just like a DPS badge. And so I use that when I'm not around my computer. And so just to verify everything. Again, you can type in the zip code and it'll show you all the sex offenders. I believe that it had 21. If you type in 79830, 21 sex offenders. And again, 15 of them are registered with me. And it comes in handy. Yeah, and when my daughter moved to Dallas, that was the first thing I did. And I was looking at all the sex offenders that lived around her area.
It's kind
So
of scary.
it is very
Yeah, I
scary,
know.
especially when I don't know. So
They're not reporting into you.
exactly. Any questions on the sex offender registration? Thank you very much for bringing that up. Okay. I made a presentation to you 2 months ago, so you have June and July statistics on y'all's, and we'll go with a PowerPoint. Not as much training as we have been doing. We, as y'all know, Sergeant Katani and her K9 artists are certified, and great to have them. We've already used them probably about 4 or 5 times, and it's good to be able to have a K9 so that we don't have to always call on Chris Roach or the sheriff's office. And so we've also we started active shooter training all the way back in June, and so we, as far as preparedness, making sure that all our stuff is straight. And then now today we started with our active shooter training with the school district. And we started with the middle school. Again, multi-jurisdiction agencies, APD, Brewster County Sheriff's Office, DPS, Border Patrol, and U.S. Marshals assisted us with today's active shooter training we did at the middle school. Been great, and it's a little sense of security as far as our community. Back in 2016, when we had our incident, we were right in there. Ryan Skelton, Chief Scout, myself, we were right in the beginning, and so no hesitation. We know how this training works. We've done it year in, year out, and there's no hesitation from either our agencies, and it's pride in all the agencies that we work with. So
Are bullet points sent out to the parents on should anything happen, who they're able to contact?
Yes,
or
ma'am.
what?
And so the school district uses, I can't remember the name of the program. Remind, thank you very much. Remind 101. Remind 101 or?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Remind
Yeah.
101, remind.
Yeah, Remind. So they have that. Once they register their students into the school district, they're onto that Remind. I still get my messages from when my kids were in there, and I never took myself off, so it's good. We also use the CopSync. So the PD uses a program called CopSync in our patrol cars, and also the sheriff's office, and so we can get messages on our phone. If we're out on patrol and we get an alert, it also comes onto our computers and alerts us. And our dispatches, as far as the sheriff's office and the PD, also have it on their computers, so they can identify these things. Our dispatch has monitors for the school districts, and so we can actually monitor the cameras there at any of the school campuses, which is useful for us. And so that training went good today, and we'll continue doing it for the rest of the week. And we've also met with the school district as far as having CopSync on their computers there, so we can, if we go to the campus and we want to work on a report while we're there just sitting around, we can log into their computer and go on to CopSync and work on reports. So it makes it pretty cool just for us to interact with the students. So
Thank you.
it's good. We also had officers work on standardized field sobriety training. Keith mentioned a while ago that he's losing one officer. Unfortunately, since the last time I talked to y'all, I've lost one. I'm losing another. And come later on this year, I'm going to lose another one to the Marine Corps. She's planning on coming back, but it's going to be about 3 months, and I'm going to be without her while she's done with, until she's completed with her training. She'll be going into the Marine Corps Reserves. I can tell you right now, one of the problems is housing for our officers, and the cost of renting is ridiculous for them, and it's hard to maintain a good home for themselves. So that's one of the things that would be useful for us. I met with Tony Gonzalez earlier, and that was one of the things that I recommended to see if there's something that he could do to assist us with housing. We're having to compete with Border Patrol agents that are making twice as much as we are. And it's hard to compete with that. So, but we still continue. We have plenty of officers to cover all the shifts, and including myself, I make traffic stops and respond to calls and do whatever I need to do to help the guys. So back on the PowerPoint, wonderful picture. When Sergeant Gattani met Artis, she was very spirit of artist, just put it nicely. And so since then, they have built a bond that good luck for anybody that tries to hurt her. And he
That's good.
yes, and so he'll take care of her. And so they're very tight. Next. June statistics, we had 919 dispatch calls, 506 officers calls for service, 40 case reports, 256 traffic stops, and 285 911 calls. For July, we have 694 dispatch calls, 552 officer calls for service, 46 case reports, 255 traffic stops, and 176 911 calls. You can go through that to the. So these are some of the. I'm wearing my contacts today, so I don't see as well with my glasses. So I guess I'm showing my age, huh? So we do our weekly meetings with the JOIC, the Joint Operations Intelligence Meeting weekly. We meet with a music advisory board. This is where we work on our ordinance for noise and to keep the music friendly environment going as well. We had a multi-agency response to the Amtrak passenger train a while back. Again, multi-agencies, pretty much the same ones that I talked about earlier. And train stop, I think it's total of 5 times here in Alpine in either direction. And I always, when I met with the TSA once before, and I've also met with the Amtrak task force, that is our that's our soft target, just to put it that way. There's nothing monitored between other than us between El Paso and Del Rio. And so that to me, that's an easy target. And we'll try to do our best to continue to maintain its security. But we ended up arresting one that was wanted. There was several legal immigrants, and there were some that had warrants that were not extraditable, so they continued on their trip. Let's see here. We participated in the Big Bend Health Fair. We took children's fingerprints. We gave out swag from the police department, showed off our bicycles, our new patrol bicycles. We have our annual sexual response team meeting. We've jointed with the Family Crisis Center, along with multi-agencies. It's called a multidisciplinary task force. And we meet monthly to make sure that everything's straight as far as our task force. And we had a active shooter response training over at Sol Ross. This is separate from the ones I was telling you about earlier. We have we're also part of the multidisciplinary team with the Child Advocacy Center of the Big Bend. And that allows us to communicate about some of the cases that we have going along with our task force. And we had a bicycle rodeo this past, I'll show you the slide here in a bit. And then along with the mayor and I and Lieutenant Coffin, we're part of the ISD School Security Planning Committee. We also have the Planning and Zoning Committee meetings that we go attend to. And also we had another sexual response team meeting. Next slide, please. We had our bicycle rodeo. It was good success. We teamed up with the Health and Human Services, and they gave out free helmets and a lot of cool little reflectors and another little bag with horns and all types of cool stuff they can add to their bicycles. And we checked their tires, make sure their bicycles were working properly, and then gave them helmets. So that was really neat. And it's always good to team up with the Health Human Services. Wyatt is Judy and I were laughing. He's our poster boy. So anytime I can post a picture of Wyatt, I'm always doing it.
Absolutely.
So, that's about it for my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you
Will
all.
Will y'all go when the sheriff does at the Christian school?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I was talking to Chris about that earlier when we were at the middle school. Yes, ma'am. We'll be there. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, gas department, Randy, come on up.
Good evening, Gas Utility Director Randy Guzman. Sorry I wasn't here last presentation. Nothing has changed since then. As you can see, everything has remained the same with the 2022 report. There's reasoning behind that. We haven't had a whole lot of time to work on our DIMP. We've been kind of working with the high school and elementary school to getting their meters up and going. We just finally last week installed the new meter for the high school, and we just installed the meter, which they're not set up yet with an account, but for the new bungalows that are happening behind the Parker Hotel. So they're getting ready to set all that up. They have this great big laundry mat and everything. They're gonna try to make sure everything's working. And the big project is the one that we've been working hand in hand with TxDOT, trying to provide them with enough volume for gas that everything that they're going brand new with, they're looking at anywhere from 12 to 14 million BTUs for that facility once it goes up and running. So we've been doing some exploratory digging and everything, trying to make sure that we find our gas lines. I've got 2 gas lines that are running parallel. One's an old steel line, one's a new poly line. We just barely discovered the new poly line, so we're not sure how they tie in to give us a 2-way feed. But we did discover that on one of the feeds coming from the south side, for some reason, we don't have the volume, the pressure to be able to provide if I go off that steel line. So we're gonna see how far the new poly line runs, which is 1.25 inch poly. That one has all the pressure we could ever need. So we're still working on that so that we can provide them a tap, which they've already paid for. Luckily, they're not quite ready, but I'd rather be ahead of the game than them waiting on us. So back to our DIMP, we did start back up this week. Of course, now the rain has delayed us again. Everything that we do, when I talk about DIMP, it's excavating, retiring, running new services, whatever we have to do for the year. I know we did one service on Monday. We had a meeting over a DIMP audit that we went through last week. We did, I don't know if Megan provided y'all that information, but
No, because you're presenting.
I'm presenting tonight. So we already got the closing back. We had no violations, so our DIMP is good for the next 5 years. We go through a very extensive audit every 5 years. And so kudos to everybody. He's the one that's in charge of the actual plan. So he's the one that makes all the yearly changes. And so they were real happy with that. And, you know, it takes all of us as a team to maintain everything that we do. So, you know, I'm real proud of everybody there at the gas department. So as long as we keep doing what we need to be doing, we'll keep moving forward. As long as we keep them happy and the feds happy, that's all that matters to me, and keeping the safety for the community. So we'll just keep moving forward. We have till December to finish up all our projects. And as soon as the rain stops, we'll get back on them, and it'll be our goal to get them all finished. But I know we have 37 more. We have a total of 37 services that we need to retire or replace for this year. As of right now, I think we done 8. So it's slowly dwindling down. The positive note on that is the ones that we're working on are actually leak surveys that we've discovered they're leaking. So it's kind of a win-win. We're working on both leaks and dam projects. So we'll be way ahead of the game then. So those leaks that we're working on are prior from last year. We did find some more this year. I can't remember the count right offhand, but they're all grade 3, so we have 3 years to repair them. We won't wait the 3 years, but we'll get on those as soon as we get done with these other ones. So do y'all have any questions?
Thank you. It's always great to hear from you. Very well run.
All righty. Well, thank y'all.
Thank you, Randy.
Okay, y'all have a good evening.
You too. Okay, moving on to public hearings. Public hearing to obtain citizens' views and comments regarding the second and final reading of ordinance 2022-08-01, an ordinance making appropriations for the support of the city of Alpine, Texas for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2022 and ending September 30th, 2023, appropriating money to a sinking fund to pay interest and principal on the city's indebtedness, adopting the annual budget of the city of Alpine, Texas for the fiscal year 2022-2023. Is there anyone here to comment? Mr. Stevens?
Thank you, Rick Stevens, Ward 1. I think you'd be surprised if I didn't make comment. Based upon the forecasted budget for this particular year of the revenue of $15.9 million, you're going to come in roughly $1.1 million under. It says you have $14.8 million. I can't see the city approving a budget higher than $14.8 million this year going forward, because if you can't make the forecast, your current plan, don't know how you're going to make it for next year. Because when you go through the details of the budget, there are no additional revenues that will be coming in. So I think you really need to question where you're going to be from a budget standpoint. And I listened earlier as Megan was walked through the numbers from an accrual standpoint. Listen, I don't think the numbers are going to be there. The other point that I would make is, as I mentioned before, you're reducing the streets budget by 20%, yet you're leaving the city operation budget flat at the roughly $1.7 million. How can we reduce streets when all we hear is keep the streets going, and yet we're going to maintain the staff at the city offices? I really think you need to be looking hard at how to be more efficient running the city, so you can get that extra $400,000 back to the streets to continue keeping our roads effective. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, see none. Moving on. Number 2, public hearing to obtain citizen views and comments regarding the second and final reading of ordinance 2022-08-02, an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Administration, amending Article 5, Records Management to the Alpine Code of Ordinances. Is there anyone here to speak? Okay, see none. Moving on. Number 3, public hearing to obtain citizen views and comments regarding the first reading of ordinance 2022-08-03, an ordinance levying ad valorem taxes for use and support of the municipal government of the city of Alpine, Texas for the fiscal year 2022-2023, providing for apportioning each levy for specific purposes and providing when taxes shall become due and when the same shall become delinquent if not paid. Is there anyone here to make a comment? Mr. Stevens?
So I would note that from a city council standpoint, and one of the things that came up 2 weeks ago at the first reading of the budget, the proposed budget that was put in place, and I know is included in your package, it showed ad valorem tax at 1.992874, or roughly $2 million. You're about to consider approving a tax rate change that actually increases the amount of revenue. I would have thought that the proposed budget you have as an action item here would be reflective of what you're talking about for approving a tax revenue, but it is not. So I would think from an accounting standpoint, you'd certainly want to get the numbers straight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak? Okay, moving on. Consent agenda, City Secretary.
Thank you, Mayor. The consent agenda this evening contains 4 items. Item 1, approval of August 2nd, 2022 regular meeting minutes. Item 2, approval of the appointment of Katie TK Santos to the Friends of the Park position on the Parks and Recreation Board. Item 3, approve Gibson Ruddick Patterson LLC letter of engagement for the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 annual audit. Item 4, approval of the short-term rental special use permit applications. And this concludes the presentation of the consent agenda for this evening.
Okay, thank you. I need a motion.
I so move.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. Okay, let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Unanimous. All is approved. Okay, moving on to information or discussion items. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Utility billing costs. With all this talk about budgeting and expenses and all that, I just wanted us to take a look at utility billing cost. It seems that we might be able to cut the cost down a little bit. For example, say there's only 2,500 users. When we take that by 60,000 in 1 year, we're looking at 36,000. By the time we put in paper and everything else, we're looking at about 40,000. Have we looked into trying to do anything to encourage people to do auto pay? To me, I know, you pay a little bit extra for auto pay. Is there any way that we can do something about that? Have we tried to give any incentives or try an email or including the billings together? I just think we need to kind of look at that and see if there's something we could possibly do to cut that cost down a little bit.
So I did put something together for you. Can you share the screen? Okay, so when you asked about that, I did some research and asked other people. The city has not provided an incentive for going on ACH payments. And I did find out some information on each side on what we have. So water has 2,794 meters. Residential is 2,418, commercial is 341, apartment is 21, hotel is 14. And there are currently 649 people on ACH. Gas has 1,974 meters, 1,659 are residential, 306 are business, and then 9 are commercial, and 509 are on ACH. So when a resident signs up for ACH, they still get a bill. So our expenses did go up on the water side because we're not sending them off anymore. We're doing them in-house, and we're not doing the postcard, which is less postage. We're doing the actual envelope, so it does cost us more. And then we're still buying the envelopes, which we do buy the blue ones. They're slightly more expensive. The gas is the same thing. Even if they sign up for ACH, they still get a bill. I think when we look at this, even if the city decides to try to do some type of incentive, you want to have it where they go online. So when we encourage residents to sign up online, doesn't mean you have to pay online. You don't have to pay that extra fees to go through our software that allows it. But you get your bill online. And so we're not paying the postage, the envelope, it's being emailed to them. So I think that's the direction, and we could do a big push for PSA to sign them up online. But if they're ACH members, they're still going to get the bill. We don't.
Is there
have
a way to combine them?
So we've been looking at that for several years.
Make it mandatory, your ACH, you're gonna get it on an email.
So ACH is through your bank. So they would have to sign up ACH to pay directly, like we pull it from their accounts. Or they could sign up for just online. There's multiple options. It's which way do we want to push? For new customers moving forward, we could say that, we're gonna sign you up for online. They have to provide a valid email, and of course, then they have to register their account, which our customer service clerk, they walk through multiple people. You do have a group of residents who they're just gonna stay on paper, and they want that piece of paper that says this is what I owe, so I can mark it off, I can put my check date, I can put when I paid it, and all that information and file it away. We looked at doing it online, combined billing. What we've noticed in talking with our current software is we don't have any consistent identifying markers to combine the two bills. And so I use me as a prime example. My gas bill has a different service address than my water service address. If you have an apartment room, or you have a rental unit where one roommate pays gas and another pays water, the names don't coincide. If you have a resident who, I have a physical mailing address, but then my bills are in my PO box, they may not match. So we've been working on trying to find that connector. We've also taken into consideration, do we do a big PSA and push for bring the info to us and we'll put you on one bill? Then it's deciding which software do we utilize. Water is slightly different in setup than gas is. Gas doesn't have the same breakdown as water, with water, sanitation, and wastewater. How do we add that gas factor and then separate it out for finance purposes? So we've asked Assist about that on occasion as well. I know that our customer service clerks aren't happy with Assist. We seem to be having more problems with less help from them. So they're doing the research. This has been brought up with doing the customer service. Do we switch software, make something that we could combine them? We would love to combine them, by the way. We truly would. Some of the unique factors with combining it, and Randy has gone home for the evening, they read their meters at a different rate that the water does. So they get their meter readings all at the beginning, the first week of the month, and gas spreads it out throughout the month. So the meter reading dates wouldn't match with the water and the wastewater. And so that would be a custom, and the Assist would have to try to figure out, how do we post water with one set of meeting dates and then gas with a separate. The biggest push right now would be to get them to go online so that they get their bills by email. And that would save us on postage, paper, envelopes. Ideally, long-term, and part of the strategic plan, I'd like to address is software. Let's make it more efficient.
Okay, Mr. Stevens.
I'd just like to comment that I think what Megan's talking about, going to the email system, works the best. I probably have 30 utility and bank bills. The only one I get paper copy is here in the city of Alpine. Everything else is done online, including my 4 bank accounts here in the city of Alpine. I don't get the paper. They get my email address. All of it comes through. I happen to do ACH because I don't worry about it. I don't want to have fuss with bills. But if you get online, you get rid of the postage. You don't have to worry about combining gas and water. You don't have to worry about all those issues. It allows everyone flexibility. But in my view, that's the strategy to go with. That's where everyone else has gone. Just get it through email and get over with.
Maybe offering some kind of incentive. Have we thought about, we're going to be saving money by not doing that? Maybe offering a little bit of
Charge them
incentive.
extra to get it by mail.
I think if we offer an incentive, I definitely need to look at the legal aspects. I would hate for a customer to come in and say, well, I've been on email for 2 years since you started it, but I'm not getting that incentive. I think we definitely need to make sure that if that's the direction the council wants to go, that we do it correctly. I think an incentive is great. We try to push ACH so that you don't have to pay the fees that are added to go through PayPal through our system. I get the bill via email, and then I have it set up ACH so that I know it automatically gets paid. And we could educate the population, and then we can switch the application that says bills will be moving forward will be by email. Please provide us a proper email address.
Maybe letting them know about ACH, because I've had a lot of people that have complained about the 2 something with PayPal and all that.
Convenience fee, sorry, that's what it's called.
Yeah.
So maybe letting them know that, hey, doing that, there is no convenience fee. Okay, thank you.
Karen.
In here in Cantrell Ward 1, I don't mind going online, that'd be great. But I'm not paying $3. That's usury. The county only charges $1 to pay your taxes online.
So
why don't we
that's
use that
actually
program?
a convenience fee set up with the company. You don't have to pay it online. You
It's
get your
not
bill
convenient for
online,
anybody though.
but you pay it through ACH, or you could come in and write a check.
Okay.
The one good thing about getting it online, and I get it online, is it's not late. It's not showing up on the 10th because it got lost in the mail. I get it. I get it at the end of every month. And if I choose to pay it like that, that's fine. If not, I can come down here and pay it, but I know how much it is by the 1st of the month. That's the one perk.
My 2 cents, my grandfather was free to be, come to City Hall and pay.
My daddy would have too.
Okay. All right, moving on. Status of water production system, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes, ma'am. I also had that one, asked Megan to come up with some information. We talked at the last meeting about leasing a well from Mr. Daughtery. And I wanted to just kind of get an overview as to whether we actually needed this, what are other wells and what capacity they had of producing. And I guess when it comes down to it, is it really needed? Do we need to get into leasing a well if we have enough to cover?
So I'm a firm believer in better be prepared. This year we were not prepared, but I did put some information together for you. So currently, the questions that were asked was the location and number of city-owned wells, production rates and current status, location and number of private wells or non-owned, and estimated cost to use them, number of water storage tank sizes and status, and then of course the status of our SCADA system to include operation and maintenance. So this is the list of our current city-owned wells. Currently, we have 4 that are not in service. Roberts 5, and let me back up here. So we have wells in 2 big locations within the area. We have what we call the Sunny Glen Field, which is out off of 1703. And then we have, I put it down as South or Jeff Davis County. That is the Mooskies Field, and that is off of North Highway 118. The Sunny Glen area is the one that we're struggling with the most on repairs and maintenance and lightning strikes. That feeds one part of Alpine. Mooskies, or the Jeff Davis area, feeds the other half of Alpine. So currently Roberts 5 is down. It was hit by lightning again. And we're pending the equipment replacement. We have asked Skinners to kind of try to rush this. How do we fix it? We're just waiting for the electrical panel to get it back up and running. Upper Hill is functional, but it's not in service. It doesn't have a chlorinator system attached to it. So the water is just straight raw water. We would need to implement or put in a chlorinator to get that up and running. Mooskies 8 and 9. Based on what documentation I can find, have not been in service for 20 years. They were damaged at some point, and the city chose not to ever put them back into service. So they're out there, they're just not used. To get those up and running, we would probably have to bring them back into TCQ compliance. Would have to look at the pump, would have to definitely regulate them to see what they would produce to begin with. Roberts 1 and 3, Gardner, and Terry 2. We just got an invoice on Terry 2, so that one has been having problems as well for some repairs on that one. The issue with our water source is we do have functional wells that can provide for the city, but because of the maintenance, the lightning strikes, we get behind. And so as part of going into our drought contingency plan is exactly that. We have to be able to get them up and running to be able to move forward with the water production. It does show you how much they produce gallons per minute for each of those wells. Gardner is your big powerhouse. Roberts 3 is your powerhouse. And then of course you have your Mooskies wells. Those are all big producers as well. So they produce the water that then feeds into our storage tanks, which is another slide. When you look at the private wells, this is not all of them, by the way. This is literally just going through our records here at the city and driving through town. And why is that little space fenced in and what is that? And just conversations that council's had in the past. The city owned multiple wells in the past, and we have returned multiple wells. The Gardner or Cartwright well was returned in 2018. The city did not renew the lease agreement for that one. Roberts 2 and Roberts 4 were both returned. Don't know when, don't know how. We don't utilize those. Those are both in the Sunny Glen area. The Daughtery well, there's currently 2 in that area. Both of them are private. The city did have access to the well 1 up until about 2006 when the city didn't renew that lease agreement. The Miles well, which was also a city-owned well, was capped. Don't know why or when. That was in the Sunny Glen area. Gardner 3 was drilled, but never put into service because it didn't meet TCQ standards. The fluoride levels were too high. Terry 1 was utilized by the city and sold in 1971. The Lewis test well is not in service. It was never fully developed. So there is a hole out there. The railroad well, which is off Neville Haynes, was never put in service and it's capped. The Kimball well was also utilized by the city. This one is out in the South Mosley Lane area. It was returned to the owner in 1990. The city did not renew the lease agreement. Merriweather, we do have documentation that 3 exploratory sites were drilled off of North Highway 118, but they were never developed. The Sullivan well, the J Stubbs, Plumco, Christian School, McElroy Ranch, Parker well, and Funk well are all private wells within our area. This is not from the Brewster County Groundwater District. I did reach out to them to ask them what wells were in the area. I did not get a response back at this time. This is literally just what we could find, or I could find in our records here at City Hall. And in discussion with the employee who used to work here for like 30 something years, and still remembers kind of what happened. At one point, the city had and utilized multiple wells. And I really do believe it was to prevent if one well goes down. Because over the years, we've let go of wells for whatever reason, we've narrowed down our access. I think it's good to have a backup. I think down the road, we may lose another well, or it may become expensive. And if we have access to that other well for backup, our Daughtery well may be a better well than Roberts 2, Roberts 4, Terry. These wells that the city has utilized currently, Roberts 1, 3, and 5, you also have to take into consideration, these have been running nonstop for years. They've never slowed down. They've constantly been in play. Unless they break down, they have to be maintained. Then they're no longer in service and they get a break. Adding another well or 2 or 3 into our group will help us in the long run. It allows us to put in a proper maintenance plan so that we can address each well as we're going along. It allows us to rotate so that we're not constantly running one well 24/7, 365. We don't want to do that, especially as we're breaking down and we're trying to get parts. When we put one out of service, it really hurts the city. That's why we went into the contingency plan. We had the weather with no rain except today, thank you. But when we have wells down, there's no way to bring that water into those tanks, which was the next part. These are all of the water tanks that the city currently has. You have Lower Hill, Upper Hill, East Tank, Muskies 1 and 2, Sunny Glen 1 and 2, Pierce, Sol Ross 1 and 2. And I added golf course, but I just want it to be very clear, that's not potable water. That tank will never be used for public consumption. That's where the effluent water goes to for the golf course, but I wanted to make sure I included it. All of them are functional. All of them do have SCADA equipped except for Pierce Tank. Multiple years ago, nobody knows exactly who, what, when, where, how, but Pierce Tank can be partially used. You can fill it up with water, but the water drains right back into the system. So for the past 2 years, they've been slowly addressing any possible cause for this. We've replaced clay valves to see if that would help with it. They've thought that it could be the bypass. So these are valves and mechanisms that are significantly old. And as the wear and tear from closing and opening things, you know, they don't fully work anymore. So they've been looking at that. Because it's not fully functional, it's not on the SCADA system. And this is why it requires someone to monitor the SCADA system, because the boosters have to be manually on and off to make sure that the water flow from Upper Hill storage tank doesn't overflow. So typically this is scheduled where you have an employee who, okay, I'll leave a booster on for a few hours, then I'll, you know, check the water levels and turn it off. This is a key piece that they've been addressing for the past 2 years to figure out why all of a sudden it just stopped working. No one knows exactly why. It is a usable tank. It's not broken. It's not something that we can't utilize. It's just trying to figure out how do we get the water to maintain it. So once it gets full, it just automatically all goes back into our distribution system instead of sitting there waiting to be used by Upper Hill or by another storage tank. So it just won't hold it. To be honest, the first time this was brought to my attention, I was like, well, there's a leak. There's a puddle somewhere. I mean, the water's going some, there's no leak. They have searched and searched. This tank, when you're going out to 1703, it's the one on the very top of that hill. There's no water coming anywhere. So it's going back into the system. They just needed to be able to stay in the tank.
So it's not so much an issue of not having the water we're needing. It's just that we've been using those wells for so long that it may get to a point that we're getting.
Gotta give them a break. And we had so many wells. For the past, 20, 30, 40 years, the city has just slowly been giving them back and not maintaining and, oh, we don't need them. We do need them. If we had kept some of these wells, we may not have been utilizing them, but we would have had them in place for when we had an emergency. When lightning strikes, it took down 2 wells the last time. 2 powerhouse wells in Sunny Glen is what keeps employees up because there's no water coming into the side of town. If we'd had maybe that 3rd one, maybe it wouldn't have been struck by lightning. And of course, that's a what if game. But having the access and availability and the backup it's the preventive measure for the city.
Would it be worth it to look into the ones that we already own but are not in service to see what it would take to get them up and running?
So yes, it would be. The reason why I brought up the Daughtery well, you have a resident or a citizen who's actively willing to let us use it 100%. First talk was, well, you could use it partially. They're willing to let us use it 100%. It wouldn't be as expensive to connect to that well because he's maintained it. So when we look at the wells that we've either taken off of our list or capped or need to put back into service, we do have to take into consideration the expenses that come with it. They have to meet TCEQ. Do we have to put in new lining? Do we have to put in new rods? Do we have to buy a new pump? What size pump? What size meter? I didn't realize when they say capped, they literally pull everything out and put a cement block on top. It's capped. There's nothing there to access it anymore. So we would have to take into consideration over the next few years, do we start bringing some of these wells back into service and how are we going to pay for them? Or do we connect to some that are currently available to us? Of course, there would be a lease agreement and utilize those now so that we're prepared for the future.
In the case of the Daughtery well, the one that we had before, pretty much everything is still in place.
Everything is in
Yeah,
place.
when they-
He just replaced the pump. He just replaced the lining inside of it. He will give us, and of course, this is just discussion and he's willing to work with us, full access to it. We would have to fence it. There is an issue of making sure that it's not usable by others, would have to go in. It was previously connected to our system, so it's just reestablishing those connections. Meriwether, I did not find anything in regards to us returning the exploratory sites back to that property or those owners. But there's no pumps there, and they would have to probably be re-drilled a little bit, cleaned out, the lining, the rods, the pump put back in, the meter system put back in to get those up and running.
But none of those owners are still there.
I
On
don't
the
believe so.
Meriwether.
That's from.
I
a
know they're
long
not
time
there.
ago.
Is there a way to, well, you want to let Keith to see if, before I go on to something else?
Oh, Keith, come on up. Thank you.
Just before I go on to something and.
Thank you.
I just wanted to piggyback off what Megan is talking about here, and why looking at, say, Darty well, number 2 is something, as he's maintained it. I want to reiterate Robert's number 5. We're going ahead and repairing that control panel locally, because to replace the parts of the control panels in there would take 6 months to get. That's part of the problem we're facing. We had to change a certain pump size because the other one was not available, and it would have been 4 months. I can't go 6 months without a well. And that's what she's saying. These wells are continuously, Darty's using them, they're working. And it's easier to do that because if you go to look at rehabbing some of these old wells, you may not be able to get the parts for 6 months. You may not be able to get parts at all. That's the society we're in right now. Supply chain issues are crippling everybody.
Is there a way, Keith, to know how much water or how much production we can expect from a well, or to check? I mean, I know like Megan says that we've been using like 3 forever. Is there a way to know that?
Well, normally what happens when a well is developed, where Megan is getting her numbers, and of course, when it's developed, you get the driller's report and it gives you the gallons per minute, the production and everything. And Mr. Doughty has maintained meticulous records of his well and what is continuously produced. And so we know those figures from that. Our wells, we take readings, so you have that as well. If you go to a well that's not been used for 5 years, you're not going to know.
So our 3 that have been Roberts 1, 3, and 5, is the production going lower than it used to be, or are we pretty much still?
There's going to be some minor fluctuations because of the aquifers, obviously, but they're still relatively hanging in there, where they have been. The problem is, like she said, it's just the split in the system. The Sunny Glen wells, our usage has increased, and of course with the drought, everybody wants more water, and it just creates issues. It's just, again, it's our personal supply chain issue of getting water from here to there, and the way the city's divided.
And our wells are metered.
Yes,
We know how much we're pumping
Yes,
out of
sir.
each well.
And that would be the same if we go with the Daughtery well, if that's the direction, which I hope we do. We would know exactly what's coming out. Then what Keith mentioned is we're divided with our water wells. You have Sunny Glen that feeds 1/2, and you have Mooskies that feeds the second half. Mooskies has been able to maintain for years. Roberts is the ones that they're falling down. You have 4 active pumps on the Mooski side that rotate our wells. They're not constantly rolling. They are on the Sunny Glen side. The demand is greater on this side of town than it is on the other, for whatever reason. It's a backup. It's time to take that preventative measure and put some of these back into service so that we can utilize. I definitely think down the road, we start adding some of the ones we have that have been capped, but we want to make sure that we address the issue now and then take the preventative moving forward to bring those back in. Like I said, the city gave away a lot,
Well, and the Mooskies wells are basically in Jeff Davis County.
all of them.
And we buy the water from the Jeff Davis Underground Water Conservation, whatever they're called. They could potentially, if they had water problems in Jeff Davis County and Fort Davis, they could cut us off and close all of our wells in that village.
So there was talk probably 2 or 3 years ago with trying to have it where everything was within our limits. instead of having Mooskies, we would have wells within the city. So that we would kind of isolate ourselves and not be so dependent on others. That's still something we can look into. I know that the McElroy Ranch has reached out to the city. The city didn't take their well because there was concerns.
They're having
Maintenance.
problems. too.
Well, see, now they're having problems, but the maintenance, there was talk of the Christian school. They do have a functioning well that they utilize. We had the railroad well that was closed down. Bringing those back into service, but we want to address them over the next several years, but we also want to address what we are going on with now, so that next summer we don't go through the same thing. And then it gives us the opportunity to address the Roberts wells to give them the break.
Thank you, guys. I know you put a lot of work into
Thank
it, and I
you.
appreciate it, and your water wells 101 for me.
For all of us.
Uh-huh.
Well, I didn't, like I said, driving around town and like, oh, that's a well. Oh, that's a well. You don't notice them. So there is a well, for those of you who don't know, that is literally right on the left side before the bridge on 118 before Tech Stop. There's a little fenced in area. That's a water well.
Megan, 100 years ago, Alpine was known as the city of windmills because every house had its own windmill. So that was a lot of windmills.
So water wells aren't registered or whatever you want to call?
So yes, and that's why I made sure to put on my slide that there's not, I didn't get the feedback from Brewster County.
Okay.
So you do, in the county, you have, well, in the city, you have to register your well. You can't put in a new well in the city limits. That is actually against our ordinances, unless you're grandfathered in. So the county does have a list. If you go to their website, I could pull the ones that have just recently been applied. I do know that Mr. Daughtery, because he is actively seeking to support the city and let us utilize that well, is actually going to apply for a different well so that he can access it for his irrigation. Before it was a shared well, he would irrigate with part of the water, the city would use part of the water. He wants to fully let us have it 100%. So they really do have a list. I just couldn't get access to it. So this is literally talking with an employee who'd been here for like 35 years, worked for the water department, Don. And then just kind of what I've heard and seen, and then going through all of our records.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Okay, moving on to action items. City manager.
Approve the second and final reading of ordinance 2022-08-01, an ordinance making appropriations for the support of the city of Alpine, Texas for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2022 and ending September 30th, 2023. Appropriating money to a sinking fund to pay interest and principal on the city's indebtedness, adopting the annual budget of the city of Alpine, Texas for fiscal year 2022-2023.
Okay, I need a motion.
I so move.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
Discussion. Okay, see none. Let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, all opposed, raise your right hand. Okay, motion carries, approving the second and final reading. Okay, action item number 2, city manager.
Approve the second and final reading of ordinance 2022-08-02, an ordinance amending chapter 2, administration, amending article 5, records management to the Alpine Code of Ordinances.
Okay, I need a motion.
So move.
I need a second. Discussion. Okay, let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, unanimous. Motion carries. Okay, action item number 3, city manager.
Approve the first reading of ordinance 2022-08-03, an ordinance leveling ad valorem taxes for use and support of the municipal government of the city of Alpine, Texas for the fiscal year 2022-2023, providing for appropriating each levy for specific purposes and providing when taxes shall become due and when the same shall become delinquent if not paid.
Okay, I need a motion.
So move.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Okay,
Megan, on that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Can you tell me where the proposed tax revenue shows up on the budget?
So on the budget, it's part of the initial, so the 1,990,000 actually includes the M&O and it includes delinquent. So historically, we have added between $60,000 and $100,000 extra to the collection for the delinquent side. This is the taxes that are paid in addition to what we actually set our tax rate at. I went back the past couple of years and noticed that it has kind of dwindled. So instead of increasing the budget and being unrealistic, I left it at the same rate and reduced the amount of delinquent we would ideally collect. And that's why you see the no change.
any other discussion? Let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, motion carries unanimous. Okay, action item number 4, city manager.
Approve the first reading of ordinance 2022-08-04, an ordinance amending chapter 94, traffic and vehicles, amending article 1 in general, amending section 94-35, police escort fee to the Alpine Code of Ordinances, repealing ordinance 2019-03-01, abolishing the requirements of a fee for requested police escort services for manufactured homes.
So moved.
Second. Okay, discussion?
Megan, on this, does this mean that from now on, they'll just take whichever route they want and come in unescorted, or?
No. And he's shaking his head because he knows.
They're coordinated up.
So they have to have a permit. So TxDOT or the state legislation came back and said that they have to have that permit from TxDOT. Once they have that permit, they're given kind of the direction that they have to go. They have to follow the state law. We had gone in prior to this being passed and made it a little bit difficult, saying, well, now you have to have an escort. TxDOT, or I'm sorry, the state legislation said, no, you can't do that. The state is already permitting them. They're already given the route that they need to take. Municipalities and counties can't go in and request extra.
And even with giving them the route, I mean, I have issues with the fact that, I mean, I've been there before and seen them where, you know, their traffic doesn't always stop for them.
Or they take those turns and you're just like, I hope I don't, that's not my house.
So are you able to, Daryl, ticket them if they don't take the route that they're supposed to, or we have?
Yes, ma'am. And the way, they have their own lobbyist, as mobile home manufacturers, they have their own lobbyist that makes sure that that cities would not be able to do this. And so that's how they go about doing it. We have a good company that actually works with us. And so it's kind of resolved for us. It doesn't happen everywhere though.
Thank you.
So they won't want to sell us and go in and go past.
Okay, all right, any more discussion? Let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, motion carries unanimous. All right, action item number 5, city manager.
Approve the 2022-2023 Alpine Public Library contract.
I so move.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, let's vote. Raise your right hand if you approve. Okay, motion carries unanimous. All right, city council member comments. Councilmember Stokes.
I'd like to start out by saying that I talked to Mrs. Bone, and I'm the one that told her to come up here and voice the complaints. Even though I knew it wasn't on there, I knew that we've all been wondering, what is everybody thinking? And they gave us an answer. Thanks, Megan, for your well study. It was very interesting. Thanks, Daryl and Randy, for their reports. Thank you, Mary Ann. If I decided to redo my fence, I probably wouldn't spend $1,000 on it. So, you know, we're gonna look at all those fees. As soon as we're getting that, let us look at them. I don't know if everybody knows the improvements are going on at the cemetery. It's not in the city, but I would like to thank a few people over that. The Ritchie family, Homer Mills, have given land on the south side because those cemeteries are full. So they've given land. Frenchie has gone out with his men and cleared the land. Rod has helped do all the deeds to deed it back. Coach Payanis has been involved. And then TDS is allowing them to take it out to our landfill where they're clearing that land.
Homer
So-
Mills and O2 Ranch are paying for the fencing.
So it's a big effort between a lot of entities that have come together to help us with this cemetery. My parents are out there, so I'm thrilled to death. Something good is finally happening. So you might go out and look, they've taken down dead trees and
Both Elm Grove and Holy Angels are each getting 2 additional acres. And new fence is being built around it. It's going to be a big improvement.
that's all I have.
Okay, Councilmember. Okay, okay.
I think this is just kind of, because of all the rain and what Darrell was talking about earlier with some of the runoff, maybe we ought to crank up our street sweeper and start sweeping the streets out of some of the rocks that have come down because of the wonderful rain we had last night. And other than that, the staff is doing a fantastic, as is the city council.
Okay, and I want to thank the audience, everybody who showed up, those who stood up and spoke and put things on our radar, such as fees. Daryl and Randy for their presentations, Megan and Gio for all your hard work, and then everyone on council for your discussions, your comments, your thoughts, everything that you do. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, and with that, we're going to adjourn with a 10-minute recess, and then we're going to proceed
No,
into
we have
executive session.
Recess and executive session.
Yes, sir.
Then you adjourn.
Okay. No, so don't adjourn?
No. you
Okay.
can call the recess.
Okay, so we're going to recess for 10 minutes. All right. Council will recess to executive.